Hi, I'm Matthew Buzzy, here with the 2020 version of the Razer Blade 15 Advanced Edition, Razer's flagship full-size gaming laptop. We've seen this design many times over the years, and it's one of our favorites. Most of the design is the same on this version, which means the same sleek, all-metal aluminum build, customizable per-key backlighting keyboard, the thin bezels, the really just quality construction, and one of the best touchpads available on any Windows laptop. A lot of the additions this year are internal. That includes the display, which is now 300 Hz on the configuration that we'd received for review, as well as an RTX 2080 Super Max Q GPU. Again, one of the best things you can get in a gaming laptop right now. With those components, you must be thinking that this is a very expensive gaming laptop, and you would be correct. Our configuration, I'll get it out of the way now, is $3,000 for these components I mentioned. That's more expensive even than some other top-end competition from different manufacturers. You're definitely paying a bit of a premium for the build itself. The performance will not be much of a tier above that, but when you're already at this super high-performing range, which we'll get to in a moment, those slight differences in performance aren't a big deal. All of these laptops in this price range are extremely fast and powerful. Now, the starting version for the Advanced Edition is $2,600, which is a little more reasonable, but still very expensive. In addition to the GPU and display I mentioned, you also get a terabyte SSD storage, 16 gigabytes of memory, and all of the other sort of high-end features that go into what making this build what it is. Now, since this is a gaming laptop first and foremost, and you're going to be paying a pretty penny for this configuration, you want to hear all about the performance. AAA games at 60 frames per second are no big deal. Some of the more demanding games out there, Control is difficult to run, for example, may challenge that depending on what settings, whether you want to use ray tracing or not. But your general games from the past several years, any AAA big budget title can run at 60 frames per second or better. On our benchmark tests, it got 100 on others, 90 on some, so it is very capable at max settings AAA titles if that's the type of game you want to play. Now, if you're thinking about the 300 Hz display and whether or not 100 frames per second on AAA games is worthwhile for that screen, that's not so much what it's for. It's really aimed at more competitive multiplayer titles. That's where you see the benefit of a 300 Hz display. In games like that, you got Fortnite, Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, Counter-Strike Go, games that are much less visually demanding and actually benefit more to have higher frame rates, can actually run more towards the frame rate ceiling. So we tested Rainbow Six Siege and it got well over 200 frames per second on the lower and medium settings, meaning that 300 Hz ceiling actually will get pushed pretty close to, if not up to. So that gives you a competitive edge. That's the sort of game where more frames per second lets you have a competitive advantage. So if you're one of those gamers playing a lot of those types of competitive titles, that's who the 300 Hz display is for, and that should be really appealing for you. In addition to that, we're used to seeing some sort of performance mode or kind of boost options within the built-in software settings that manufacturers ship the laptops with, and that is true here. Razer's, I will say, are a step above what we've seen. There's options in the Synapse included software that let you boost between medium, low, high, and boost to get more out of the GPU and CPU. And sometimes we see a couple frames per second gain from that. In the case of this laptop, it actually got as much as 5, 10, 15 frames depending on the game. So it could actually be pretty worthwhile. The fan speed and the heat kind of increased as you would expect in relation to that. The fans definitely got louder. I don't know if everyone would want to play on that all the time, nor does every type of game you play really need that extra percentage boost. But if you're one of those people and the sound doesn't bother you, go for it. Turn it on, boost it all the way, play on that all the time, and it actually will benefit you. The fan speed and the heat situation normally is okay. The fans are reasonably audible. They're not crazy. I think it's better than some past Blade laptops where the fans have been a little loud. I think they've done a better job tuning that, so kudos there. As for the rest of the physical build, other competitors have caught up. This used to be kind of the trailblazer, the first laptop to really go thin and light while still offering top-end performance. It still does that. It's less light than it used to be compared to the competition. Others are now even a smidge lighter. Razer kind of compromised slightly on making it as thin as possible to get a little more performance out of it. It's still only 4.73 pounds. It's only 0.7 inches thick, so relatively speaking, and especially for a gaming laptop, this is a thin machine, and it's still pretty easy to carry around. The metal chassis makes it a little more dense, and so I think that's what some of the difference is, but that's a bit of a trade-off for it feeling so good. The green logo I could do without. The Razer Blade 13 has a nice etched black on black logo. I do prefer that. I think the lime green kind of mars the look. Maybe a black lit white light or something like that might be a little cleaner, but it's fine. Razer wants to stick to their branding. On top of that, there's a pretty good port selection on this laptop. You have 3 regular USB Type-A ports. There's 2 USB-C ports, one of which is Thunderbolt 3, and both of which can charge devices. An HDMI connection. So really kind of everything you could want out of a laptop like this. There's no Ethernet jack. That might be a deal breaker for some, or at least not ideal for some. But that's usually a bonus inclusion at this point. Razer has added an SD card reader, so that's a nice inclusion for anyone sort of media-centric who might want that option. Finally, the battery life. The Blade 15's always been kind of a step ahead of the others. Again, they've caught up and made strides in battery life, but Razer's is still very good. 7 hours on our rundown test is really good for a gaming laptop, especially one with this high refresh screen and such powerful components inside. That's sort of a boon for anyone who wants to use this as a general use laptop, take it on the go. In addition to gaming at home, it can last most of the day off the charger. Obviously, if you play games on it, you're gonna see a decline in battery life, but for most general purposes and for a lot of the day, this has enough juice to get you through.